Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, but if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's fine. We do record the show as we are doing today, and it will be available for you to watch later at your convenience. And I will show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of our show recordings. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open for anyone to watch. So please do share with your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, anyone you think might be interested in any of the topics we have on NCompass Live. For those of you not from Nebraska, the Nebraska Library Commission is the state agency for libraries. So we're similar to your whatever state library. So we provide training and resources and databases and grants and consulting to all types of libraries in the state. So you will find shows on NCompass Live for all types of libraries. Public, academic, K-12, corrections, museums, historical societies, et cetera. Really, our only criteria is that something to do with libraries. We have Nebraska Library Commission staff that sometimes do presentations for us about projects or programs or services we offer through the commission. But we also bring in guest speakers as we're doing today. Joining us from our neighbor to the south in Kansas is Cari Cusick, who's at the Newton Public Library, and she's going to talk about navigating building projects, something that many libraries have to do sometimes, want to do, struggle with. It's not the kind of thing you do on a daily basis at a library. So we'll get some good input on what Cari did at their library. So I will hand it over to you, Cari, to tell us all about how you did it there.
Great, thank you, Krista. I am excited to join you from Newton. So Newton is a town of about 18,000 people. We're just north of Wichita in south central Kansas. And we opened our new library on April 1 of 2024. Prior to that, I was the director of a smaller library just down the road a ways. And I was there when we did a new building and fundraising project a number of years ago. So having done 2 of these projects, I owe a debt of gratitude to all of the librarians who shared their stories with me about their processes, what they did, what they learned, because like Krista says, you don't do this every day. You may only do this once in your career. And so sharing that wisdom is incredibly important. So I'm here today to continue that tradition. I am in no way, shape, or form an expert. I don't have a roadmap for you. As we know, our libraries and our communities are all so incredibly different. Our finances are different. Our government structures are all different. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all plan, but hopefully by sharing about our project and our process and some perspective that I've learned along the way, hopefully there is something that you can glean that will be useful as you make your own roadmap. So I'm going to start with an overview of our project. This is the front of it here. If I get my controls, there we go. So our library was a $10 million project. So the city of Newton, the library, and private donations were all used to build this library. The library in Newton is a legally autonomous entity from the city, but the city owns our building and we have a no-cost lease with them. So it had to be a group project to get this going. So the city of Newton agreed to commit funds. Those were bonded. Where we are, that doesn't require any sort of public votes, but it is taxpayer money, obviously. The library contributed $2.2 million. About $1 million of that was out of capital reserve funds that we had. And then we are also making payments every year for 20 years over the life of that bond. And then we had a volunteer group that went out and raised $3.3 million, which is for our community a pretty impressive number. And we'll talk a little bit more about fundraising here in a bit. So a brief timeline, like I think every library project under the sun, it feels like it takes at least a decade from when people start talking about it to when actual traction occurs. And I was not here prior for the early parts of this, but there was a lot of discussion, again, for about a decade, and just couldn't get that traction and that momentum. But in 2019, library board, city leadership started to sort of get on the same page, and the city got RFPs for an architect. So the architect came in and they looked at whether it would be more cost effective to build a new library or renovate the existing library. And once they determined that it would be more cost effective to build a new library, then they had public visioning sessions about where that should be located. And public opinion was very strongly in favor of keeping it just next to the existing library. We're just a block off of our downtown area. And the architect also did brainstorming sessions with the community about what the library meant and what features and amenities in a new library were important. And there was a fundraising feasibility study in there as well. In spring of 2020, yes, spring of 2020, lots of other things were happening then as well. But there was a project agreement signed between the library board and the city. And that agreement laid out how the process was going to go, what were kind of the steps and the commitments of each party to formalize that agreement. Then, because of COVID, the fundraising, there was a consultant hired, and then that really started to get started in fall of 2020. In fall of 2020, the 31-year library director also retired. So I came in December of 2020 in this process. So fundraising had just started. We were trying to get momentum. The first benchmark that we were supposed to meet under that project agreement was to raise half of the private funds. We hit that right on target in November of 2021. And then we moved into the design phase. And that's where you take the concept drawing and do the actual blueprints, the actual what color chair goes everywhere, what paint colors, all of that. And we did pretty substantially change some of the features inside and the layout inside from that original concept drawing. Size and everything stayed the same. So for a year, we were doing design phase and continuing to fundraise. And then in November of 2022, we hit the fundraising goal, which had actually had to go up from the original goal, but we met it. And they put it out to bid. That bid was awarded in December 2022. Groundbreaking started next month. Took a little over a year to build. So we were still open while the new building was being built behind us. Once it was done, we rode all the books down the hill into the doors of the new library. We were closed for about 4 weeks. And then we opened on April 1. The next day, they started demoing the old library. And then where the old library was is now our parking lot that we did not have before. And that was completed in the summer. So crazy process. I have a couple, I have some slides in a minute with some pictures. But when we were talking in the community about this project and why we needed this new facility, we kind of framed it in 3 levels. The first level is just a functional and safe building. Our prior building was built in the 70s, so we needed up-to-date fire systems and electrical systems, wiring that supports modern internet and data needs. We had a lot of water intrusion issues, both from the roof and at the ground level, which of course then creates mold issues. So there were a lot of just basic problems with the building. Then there's that level of accessibility. People who couldn't use the space because the bathrooms, the doors, the entries were not ADA compliant. There was only parking on the street. So whether that means you have mobility issues or you're trying to unload a toddler into a stroller, that's not a great accessible solution either. So we were able to solve a lot of those issues, get a drive-through service window and book drop, and make it so our space could be accessed and used by a much wider scope of people. And the third level is kind of the dream level, this idea that we're expanding our role as a community hub. bringing in people for more than just books, even though books are still very much a part of what we do. So that's the meeting room spaces that we added, which we do make available to the public. That's small and small group private study rooms. We went from 0 to 6. That's expanded teen areas and children's areas. That's just an indoor fireplace and comfy places to sit, and features that make all the people just want to come and be at the library, to gather there, to collaborate there, and use the space in some of those non-traditional ways. And we'll talk about fundraising, but I will say, as librarians, sometimes when we talk about the need for a new library, we get really focused on that first one because it's the problems that we deal with every day, you know, the mold and the water. But for many of our donors, and getting people excited about the project, those bottom 2 levels, the idea that we are creating possibilities instead of just fixing problems tends to resonate better when we're trying to sell the idea of why we need a new library. So these are just some pictures of our space, and there are more at the end, and I will share my slides with Krista so you can see them. On the one on the left, you can see the dirt pile because this was taken before we opened, and the demolition and parking lot were not done. So it doesn't look like that out our window now. But this is our fireplace in one of our main seating areas. The top right is part of our expanded teen area, and the bottom is the welcome desk. That's what you see when you come in the front doors. And Newton is a train town, and so there's lots of nods to trains, including our custom children's bookshelf over here that they can play in. On the top right are some of our study rooms, and the bottom right just shows some of our portable book displays and also our donor wall, which is something I'm very proud of, and we'll also talk a bit more about that. So these are the specifics of our project, but again, as I think about what was helpful for me and what I hope might be helpful for you, I want to spend a little time talking about perspective, because when we're managing these building projects, there's the technical side, but then there's just the expectations and the information overload that comes along with these. When I was my first building project, I was a brand new library director. They had just approved the bond to build it a few weeks hired, and we had the grand opening a year after I was hired. So it was drinking from a fire hose, and I came in full of optimism and excitement. And then reality hits, because you've got people saying, oh, we don't need a new library. Like, I'm fine with this one. Why do we need this? Or all of the decisions that come that you have to make, and you have to make them soon, and they all feel so permanent and they feel so weighty. And then you get this library open and you're so proud of it, and then a few weeks later you're like, why did we do this? Or a few months later, why did I not do this? Or why did I buy this and not this? And so it can create a lot of sort of paralysis. It can drain a lot of energy. So I want to share a couple of things that I learned after doing my first project that really helped me manage my second one, and I wish someone had told me earlier. And that is two truths, if you will. Your library is never going to be perfect, and you will not make everyone happy. And you know, these are super cheery, right? And I think we all know these, like, they're obvious. But when we get in these sort of once in a generation projects that feel so special, because they are, and so big and important, we can kind of lose sight of the fact that it's never going to be perfect and not everyone is going to be happy. And that can really sap our energy and our agency. It can promote sort of decision paralysis that goes along with it. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that might look like, and some strategies that we can use to sort of mitigate this. Because second time around, I tried to think of it like this. If we could get 85% of the dream library we were trying to get, and if we could make 85% of the people happy, then we were doing pretty good. I obviously made that number up, and it's not the number that you go and put on your fundraising brochure or on your website, but we have to realize we're never going to hit 100% on either of these. If the majority of people are objectively not happy with the direction of the project. Or if you're going to go through an immense campaign and project and you're not going to get the bulk of what you need in a new library, that's probably a time to reflect on whether you're moving in the right direction. But 85% of both of these is going to be such a huge leap forward for your library and your community. And it's, I think, a realistic target to aim for. So your library will never be perfect. Again, we know this. We're librarians, right? We know our budgets and our resources are always finite. I think always. I've never met a library that wasn't finite. And we may also have other limitations as well, maybe limited by the lot size, for example. So when we go into these projects, our wish list always is going to be reined in by reality. There are features that we want that just won't fit or we can't afford. Things may not be as big as we want. I mean, do I wish my library was 25% bigger? Absolutely, I do. There's always that reality that comes in where we have to say we are not going to accomplish everything we want to accomplish. Our brain space is also finite, and these projects have a million details that go into them. And you will not catch everything. You will not put an outlet somewhere where you really need to put an outlet. And you're going to think, how did I miss this? You're going to miss things like that. You're going to get your children's study room, the walls go up, and you realize there's no exit door. Apparently that's okay with fire code. It's not a good idea. We didn't catch that when we were looking at the 2D drawings of the building. You're going to put in vending machines because that seems like a really good idea, and you find out that it is a 0 out of 5 stars idea. Trust me on that one. I'll talk more about that. So our budgets, our resources, and our brain power are all finite. Also, as we know, again, our trends, our services, those are continually evolving, sometimes even faster than our building projects move. So we had a space in our new library that we were really excited about. We called it the Digital Access Lab to support digital content creation. Seemed like a fantastic idea. It didn't get much use. It just sort of never got that traction. So this summer, that actually became the office space for an embedded social worker who is now at our library, and that idea has definitely gotten traction. So we can't predict the services that we might have in 2-5 years. And so again, we're never going to achieve this moment of the library is perfect, it is everything that we need, and we never need to improve upon it. That is not the goal. So strategies for mitigating this. Just remind yourself, your board, and your staff that this is the case. When you talk about the project, don't sell it as we're going to do this once and done forever. It's like we're going to do the best we can. We're going to keep our spaces as open and flexible. We're going to be as responsive to the community, but we're going to get in there and 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, we are going to need to change the space. Being open and honest and expecting that up front can just take sort of the sting out of it when it does actually happen. Also, you need to visit other libraries. Hands down, one of the most important things that you can do. As a new director in both my roles, sometimes it feels like, oh, I need to be in my office, that it's a waste of time to spend a lot of time visiting other libraries. But this is critical for seeing how spaces are actually being used, seeing how trends actually bear out, seeing what features do get used and what ones maybe don't resonate as much as we think that they will. Visit libraries that are new, but also visit libraries that have been renovated or built to 5-10 years ago. When I built my first library, there was a really new library in the area that just loved it. We took a lot of inspiration from it. Fantastic library. When building this library, went back to that library, and they were getting ready to do a pretty decent little renovation, changing some of the features. So I got to learn, like, okay, you've been here a decade. What didn't go the way you think? What has changed? That is really useful knowledge. Because the thing is, architects, I loved our architect. They're amazing. They're experts at what they do. But they build a library and then they move to the next library. The architect doesn't come back and say, hey, a year ago, we told you these chairs were great. Have those chairs held up? Or a year ago, we suggested this. Has that held up? Librarians will give you the honest feedback on that, and you need that feedback to make sure that you are making wise decisions. We didn't have in the plan a drive-through service window. We visited another library that had built a new library and then added one a few years later. And in listening to them, we realized that that was actually a really useful feature. And we changed our design, and it is a heavily used feature that wasn't even on our radar. So go and visit other libraries. And then we'll talk about core team, but in this process, you and the people that you work with have to have open and honest, occasionally feisty dialogue in that core team. You have to be able to really hash things out. Again, you know, those architects, they're amazing. They're experts in what they do. But you're an expert in what you do, and you're an expert in your patrons and how they use the space. So all of that expertise has to come together so that you can have a good core team that gets you the best library for your library and for your community. So one example, I wanted single stall, gender neutral bathrooms. I wanted that. Then I went and visited with other libraries and got even more reasons why I thought those were important. I don't want to be on the 6 o'clock news because of who's in the bathroom with whom, or however grammatically you say that. But also, you know, parents who have littles of a different gender, older adults, maybe if one's in a wheelchair and the man needs to help the woman or vice versa. There's a lot of situations where these made sense. And the architect's perspective is they take up more space, which was at a premium, and they cost more money, which money is also at a premium. But I insisted because I knew that that mattered. There were other things, though, that I would go to the architect and be like, we need to do this, and they would come up with a better solution than what I had in mind. So you've got to be able to have that back and forth and keep that open and honest dialogue to get the best product. All right, you will not make everyone happy. We know this. It is so easy to feel like you're doing something wrong because somebody criticizes it. And yet we know that anytime we do anything, someone is going to be unhappy about it. And when we do these big public-facing projects, that is more true than ever. From my first project to my second project, I think this has only gotten worse. Social media has really fueled this sort of opinion entitlement era. Everybody thinks that they have a right to level their opinion about everything. And social media can really amplify that to where it feels like everyone is opposed to this. And in reality, it might be a handful of people. It might even be a handful of people who don't even live in your town who are commenting. Also, when you do these projects, be warned, suddenly your patrons and community members they are now architects, they are now engineers, they have expertise that you had no idea that they had, because they will come out and tell you why the architect is doing everything wrong, why you're doing everything wrong, why the civil engineer is doing everything wrong. That faux expertise is also a very prevalent sort of information overload that's going to come at you when you start to make these decisions. So strategies, going back to core team, choose them very wisely and keep that team small. Your core team should probably not be your entire library board. It should probably not be your entire library staff unless you're very tiny. For my first project, it was the designer, the contractor, one board member, and myself. For this project, it was our point person from the city, who was fantastic, myself, one staff member, sometimes a library board member, and then the architect and their interior designer. There are lots of times where you go and get targeted feedback. You know, if we are doing this and somebody needs to weigh in on that, but that core team that's meeting regularly, that's deciding the fabric and the carpet and the arrangement of the bookshelves, if it is a large group of people, you're going to committee yourself to death very, very quickly. That being said, we want to create intentional opportunities for community and staff input. That's kind of the flip side. So going back, when you're doing these projects, do you want to do surveys? I think in-person groups for the community are really fantastic, because number one, when you put people in a group, there is a, forgive me, synergy that happens in those situations. Also, people can quickly realize that not everybody in the room automatically agrees with them, that there are a lot of perspectives to consider. And when you get that input, not only is it useful, but a lot of the people who do a lot of the complaining won't necessarily take the initiative to participate in those kinds of structured feedback mechanisms. But just being able to say, look, we went out, we asked people, we got the feedback, we considered it, we included it, can be really powerful in shutting down criticism, especially later in the process, by people who come in after the decisions are made. They're like, why did you do that? Just being able to say, look, we did our due diligence is really important. Staff, I think staff is in many ways the most complicated, because on the one hand, we want to give staff the opportunity to weigh in on decisions and features that impact their everyday work life. And staff at times are the experts in very particular things. How do we need this room set up for story time? How do we need this to go for this to work correctly? So we need to have those mechanisms for staff input. The flip side of that is you not making everyone happy applies to your staff too. Some of your staff may just not like change. I have found that to be the case, that there are staff that are just resistant or opposed to change, or they may want to just recreate what already exists and just move it over into sort of a spiffed up version without necessarily thinking through whether that's the best way, the most efficient way, the most community-minded way to continue doing whatever that function is. Again, we're going back to our budgets and our resources are finite. As the library director, I had to weigh the whole project. You know, I couldn't make it as big as I wanted. I wasn't going to get everything, and we have to balance all of those decisions. And not every staff member that you have is going to be able to sort of do that kind of math. They might be very focused on what they want in that area, but as the director or another staff person or board member, you may realize what the cost of that is, and it may be a cost that you're not willing to make. I mean, I would have loved for our storage rooms and our staff areas to be bigger, but that would have come, and we looked at ways to do that, but it would have cost us small study rooms. And those study rooms are heavily used. They're often all full. So when you have to make those decisions, understand that it is going to be awkward at times. So again, as much input as you can get in constructive ways is good, but you're not going to make everyone happy. And it's better to sort of not make them happy rather than try to overly accommodate and build features in a new library that are very specific to certain staffers, because when they leave or retire, that may not have been the best way to do it. So that is just an area, again, I think it's just a difficult one to navigate. So being prepared, being honest, being transparent, but knowing what your project goals are and knowing what you're trying to accomplish is really important. We also want to equip and expect staff and board members to be ambassadors. They are going to get a lot of questions, even if you are in a quiet phase of fundraising, even if you're sort of in the design phase where you're not ready to share things publicly. Particularly a smaller community, they're going to get lots of questions. They're going to get that opinion, entitlement, and faux expertise. They're going to get it too. As the director, you're not the only one who's going to see that. So how can we equip them? One really good way is, as much as possible, do like FAQ documents that get updated. For example, we kept getting comments once they started construction on the roof. Everybody thought the roof was too flat. And so we got the architect to explain the roof, and we wrote an answer. And so all the staff and board and campaign people could see the answer about why the roof looked like that. So anytime that you can equip them with good answers, that is really useful. Also, having them understand that if they are unhappy about facets of the project, that's not something that they should be sharing publicly. And also, if they don't know the answer to a question, then they shouldn't try to answer that question, because that can really spread misinformation very, very quickly. So that all felt maybe a little sort of, I don't know, heavy negative, but I just want to go back to 85% is a huge leap forward. So this is through July. I'm working on our year-end stats, and they're holding pretty true. But when I look at the last year in the old library, and this was our first full year in the new library, our visits are almost twice what they were. Our physical circulation is up 25%. Our digital circulation is up, I think it's close to 60%. Our computer usage is up like 275%.
Wow.
And all this to say that if you aim for 85%, that's going to be pretty amazing. If you get most of what you need and most people are happy, that is so much energy and excitement and enthusiasm for your community that 15% is going to fade into the background pretty quick. Because we know what this means, right? It's more kids in story time. It's more people coming in and using our meeting rooms. It's more people using our computers for all sorts of important functions. This is excitement for our community. This is where we need to focus, even though it's easy to be distracted by the negative 15%. So with that, I'm going to shift gears a little, and I'm going to talk about some of the practical stuff. And I apologize because I could talk about this all day. These are such big topics, and it's going to feel a little hodgepodgey because I want to answer some of the questions that other librarians reach out to me and ask the most. So we're going to talk a little about donations and moving. So my contact information will be at the end. I'm not deep diving.
As we said earlier, in case anyone didn't catch that, the slides will be available to you afterwards as well with the recording. We'll have a link for them. So all the information's on here. You don't have to try and write all this down or take your own notes. You will be able to refer back to it later for all these details and statistics and everything as well as watching the recording of the show too.
So I get asked a lot where the 3.3 million came from. So I broke it down. Most of that came from individuals. Our biggest donor was $500,000, all the way down to $25. If you donated $1,000 or above, you got on the donor wall. We also had several nice gifts from foundations, businesses, primarily banks, but not exclusively. This pie chart, we are immediately adjacent to the city of North Newton, which is legally distinct. They do not have their own library, but they are not in our library taxing district. But they actually contributed $100,000 to help make this library possible, because they recognize that we serve a lot of their citizens, and we were able to show that we serve a lot of their citizens with our library services. And then there's some organizations like the Chamber and United Way that are in there as well. We talk about donors. It's really, and not everybody's going to fundraise when you build a new library, but if you do, Donors, it's important to remember that not all library users are donors. Again, that was a little shocking for me in my first library because people who were in there all day, every day, giant stacks of books in their hands, were like, oh, we don't need a new library. I'm fine with this library. I know where everything is. So a lot of the people who use our library every day may not be inclined to give. They may not see it as important, or as we know, a lot of them may simply not have the means to support our work. So sometimes I think people think fundraising starts with your patron list. Not necessarily, because not all donors are library users. Many of the donors on our donor rolls are not regular library users. Some are. Some used the library in a different phase of their life, like maybe when their kids were little and they just don't use it now. But people also give, we had someone give a very nice gift. His mom was a librarian. He just understands the value of libraries in general, and what it means for a community. But many of your donors are simply people who are used to giving. They have disposable income, and they're used to investing in causes that matter to them to improve their community. And so, again, whether it's because they use the library and they want a nice library because they use it, or because they understand the importance of libraries in general, or they just want a nice town with nice features for a variety of reasons, our job is to find the story that resonates with them specifically. And what is fantastic about libraries is we have so many great stories. You want to support children? Check. You want to support literacy? Check. Combating the epidemic of loneliness and encouraging community connection? Check. Technology help? Check. You can make your own list. Libraries have so many different facets where we have impact in our community, and learning to recognize that and to tell those stories, again, not just focus on, we got a mold problem, but how are we making impact in these different ways, and what might speak to a particular donor is really going to help you make those asks and help you get those fundraising dollars. Okay, random side note. For both of my, the building projects I've been a part of, we actually partnered with our community foundation. If you are covered in an area geographically where there is a community foundation, this is something I would encourage you to at least look into. We have a library foundation, not a friends group, that was already an affiliate of our local community foundation. But for this project, we created a separate building fund, so not an endowed fund. But all of the donations went there. They have the 501c3 label, which is really useful for a lot of grants and foundations. They handled the tax receipting. We did a state tax credit program that was fantastic, and they helped manage all of the paperwork on that. And their CEO actually sat on our fundraising committee and brought a lot of really valuable insights into just donors in general and even specific donors. The community foundation may also have donors who give out of their own donor advised fund every year. And so by communicating with them, and they know your project is happening, they may be able to mention that when someone says, hey, what's going on in the community that needs support, they can maybe add you to the list. And we did actually get a few donations that way from people who don't even live here, who just support the community generally. So if that's an option, it's one I would encourage you to explore.
Here in Nebraska, we have a Nebraska Community Foundation that is the statewide organization that then sets up and runs all the individual community ones in different communities that want them. It's not in every single community, but it definitely is something we encourage libraries to always be connected with and find out, do you have one? Or if you don't, just go to the state level one and ask them for all of that assistance with any sort of fundraising and connections.
Yeah, they are so knowledgeable, fantastic partners if that is an option. Campaign Leadership Committee, this is what we call the group of volunteers who did the actual fundraising work. So we had 9 people. I was on there. Again, CEO of the Community Foundation, 2 board members. If you have more than 2, it's an open meetings violation, so never more than 2 for us. and then just community members who were committed to the project. If you have to raise money and you are trying to get this group of people together who are going to go raise a significant amount of money, whether it's 100,000 like my first project or 3.3 million, when you choose these people, you have to realize that this is different than picking maybe your library board members. And it's not a party planning committee. Sometimes people hear fundraising and they think fundraisers. And while that might be part of your strategy, the reality is most fundraising work to raise a significant amount of money is people who are comfortable talking about money, who can sit down with people who have money and ask them for their money. It is a very specific skill set. Not everybody is equipped to do that. Many of your library board members are not comfortable with that. Again, with our library board members, we're usually looking for a lot of diversity. We're looking for, making sure we keep splits of gender and ages. With our campaign leadership committee, they need to probably have money. Generally, they are going to skew wealthier. They're going to sometimes skew older because, again, they're at a phase of their life where they have disposable income. They need to know people with money and, again, be comfortable sitting down and talking about the project and asking them for money. We kind of had a running joke. One of the most fantastic people on our committee, it seemed like 75% of the time, or I don't know, it felt like a lot, we'd say, okay, here's the next contact, who knows them? And she'd say, oh, I go to church with them. Oh, I go to church with them. Oh, I go to church with them. You need people on your committee who go to church with people who can give you money, or who may have connections in other ways, connections to the business community or whatever. Again, there might be a role. We had a little ad hoc group that plans like the groundbreaking and who plans the chamber after hours, things like that. And some of those there's a little overlap. But when you're finding volunteers to raise money, be very specific about what that looks like and the skills that you need for that role. And bigger is not necessarily better, because if you get too many people, it just weighs down the process.
Yeah, networking, you'll find, will be in some of the most surprising places. You never know.
And your campaign committee members, if they know people, can find the story that resonates with that particular donor, because it's not just a generic story. So it really enables them to personalize the ask by speaking to things that matter to that donor if they know them and know their history. Things we could have done better. And I will say, as the library director, that I made this list, obviously. This is stuff that, if it's not done well, may very well fall primarily back on the library director. So I wish we had had professional materials prepared early. Again, there's often a quiet phase and this sort of idea that we're working behind the scenes. But then, I had a sweet gentleman show up one day. His name was Steve. Steve came in. Steve was not on any of our campaign lists. We never would have reached out to Steve. But he came in the library and he asked about the project, and I did not have things ready. And I scrambled and I found stuff. And turns out his wife had been a huge supporter of the library. She had passed away, and he really wanted to make a nice gift. And it was a $15,000 gift. And Steve is going to show up in your office. You're going to have your own version of Steve. Be ready for Steve. Be ready for those people who will come out of nowhere, who are maybe prepared to give in ways that you would never expect. Be upfront with your naming and donor opportunities. Again, small town, there's kind of this desire to not be overly rigid about those. But first off, we're a city building. So we found out in the middle of the process we needed to have a naming rights agreement with the city after some things had already been promised. Never when you want to figure that out. You need to be equitable, making sure that everybody's getting the same opportunities for the same dollar amount, not just the person who's willing to ask for it. Also, it ensures that volunteers, when they're making the ask, are not promising things that can't be delivered on, because that also happens, and that's a real fun situation. You get to use all your diplomacy skills there. So make sure, if you're going to have naming rights, named areas throughout the building, that all of that is specified up front and clear to any potential donor for that. And then just clear structures. It's hard with volunteers, you know, because they're volunteering, but things like, if you don't come to so many campaign meetings, you're no longer on the committee, would be helpful. As the library director, even if you have a fundraising consultant, even if you have a community foundation, even if you have a fabulous group of volunteers, a lot of work is going to fall on you, just administrative work, and being ready for that. And if you need some help, if you need to pass off other responsibilities, making sure that that is a manageable workload, because these are very intense projects. Understanding the role of your board, again, what comes to them in terms of design, what comes to them in terms of fundraising. They can't know all the fundraising pieces either, because then it becomes public record. So what is that communication going to look like? How can they support the project, even if they're not out there asking for money or taking on those roles? If you have any consultants, make sure that there are clear expectations, clear chain of command. What are the deliverables? What are the timelines? I mean, they'll never guarantee you that they can raise money, and that's fair. But, what are their roles? What are their deliverables? What is their timing? If there's quality issues, if there's communication issues, who's authorized to address those, and what is the process? Fundraising consultants can be fantastic, but they should never be in the driver's seat. So whether it's the library director, the library board who's monitoring their work, and just making sure that they are delivering on what they said that they were going to deliver on, and what happens if they don't. I know that I'm running out of time. I do want to talk about donor recognition. Krista, you'll have to just yell at me at some point.
I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, please do type in the questions section of your GoToWebinar interface. Anything you want to know more about, anything you were wondering about that Cari didn't mention yet, that you want to make sure you could pick her brain about while we're here today, please do type into your question section there.
Okay. So donor recognition, we rejected all the off-the-shelf ideas for the donor wall. We hated them. Again, that dialogue with the architect when you're like, nope, nope, hard pass. So the board actually took this out of the project so it wouldn't have to be put out to public bid. And we found a local artist who created this. There's about 200 names, about 20,000 mosaic tiles. This has been very well received. When you have your donors, you want to thank your donors properly. And I think this exceeded a lot of their expectations. It's beautiful art for us. Just thinking through how you're going to thank them. And this works out really, really well. We also had 2 events before we opened. There was the night where we actually unveiled this. We have black sheets covering it, so when they came in, they couldn't see it. And we had the artist talk about it. And then we actually unveiled it, and we had wine and hors d'oeuvres and music, and it was just a lovely evening for anyone who gave $5,000 or up. And then we had just a cookie punch afternoon for anyone who gave $1,000 or up, that they could walk through and see the library before it opened. And those were really special ways for us to thank the donors. And then as a follow-up, when you raise $3.3 million, you find a lot of people who come out of the woodwork that you are not expecting, and who we want to keep and capture that momentum. Because as we know, just because, again, the library is never perfect, those needs that we have are always going to continue. So how can we continue communicating with them? We've sent out newsletters and updated them about, how the use is increasing and the exciting things that are happening here because we have a new library. And we did our first inaugural fundraiser inside the library back in October. We were able to raise $70,000 to start a new endowed fund to support programs and services at the library. And a lot of that comes from donors that we had identified in the campaign who are excited about, yay, I gave to the library, good things are happening. Oh, more good things are happening? Let me support that too. So just because the fundraising campaign is over, again, you're not done. You can really capture that momentum to do even more and better things with your community. I am going to do.
Someone did comment about the donor wall there. That is, I love how unique looking it is. And I agree. So many donor walls are, bricks, square bricks, or just lists and lists, and very simple and sterile and boring. Even I could say. And yeah, that's great to acknowledge them. But doing something that's more creative and artistic like that, it is very, very beautiful looking. Yeah.
Yes, and I will say it didn't actually cost a whole lot more than the off-the-shelf ones. So definitely worth exploring. Oh, so much to talk about. Moving, start as early as you can. Nothing clutters up a new library like clutter. I have seen this in libraries that were pretty much brand new and were already cluttered. Even a year and a half in, we're already fighting it. So start as early as you can. Rent dumpsters for weeks. Peel off the first layer. Then do it again 3 months later. Get rid of stuff. We had our art sale 6 months before we moved. Go through your records retentions. I promise you don't need leave request slips from the 1960s like we had. Be firm with your staff. If it doesn't fit in the new library, it doesn't go. Hire as much help as you can. I understand that movers are not an option for everyone, but get bids. We got 2 bids, one from a national company and one from an area company that I had used before. One bid was $87,000 and one was $15,000. So do not just call the well-known names in library moving, because especially if you're smaller and you're not housing stuff for a long period of time, there may be other much more economical options out there for you. This is actually, that was the old library. They wheeled all of the books down into the front door of the new library. It was very nerve-wracking for us as a staff to watch. They only toppled one cart, so
it looks like it. Yeah, it's very much kind of like jury-rigged there. And
I have a couple other slides, but I'm going to stop here just because if you are an entity that has a lease agreement like we do, this is a fantastic time to review that document. These are really important documents. I would encourage you to Google St. Mary's Library, Kansas in the news section and see what happens when that goes south. We were on a year-to-year lease before this. We were able to go to a 20-year lease agreement, which is huge. That just puts the library on much stronger footing if there becomes issues about books in the collection or other disagreements. Even if you're not building, don't just leave those documents in a file. If you have them, they matter. Make sure they're up to date. Get an attorney who represents your interests to advise you throughout the process. Obviously, if you're building new, there's going to be new things, changes to that as well. Don't ignore those documents. They really, really do matter. In my slides, I have some things things our patrons love, things we don't love or we're like, wish we had, that we'll share, and then there's more pictures. But my contact info is here. I know I talk fast, but you are always free to reach out to me. I can talk about anything. Again, not an expert, but
we have some time for some questions and answers or comments. Anybody has anything else we want to type into the question section, please do go ahead and do so. Someone did comment about when you're talking about the staff and making sure that they have answers to things. This is something I think that is typical of anything for your staff. Make sure that they have agency and you empower them to answer the questions themselves with the information, the correct info, as you said, and not giving an answer if you just don't know, the answer, the correct answer. Some comments, that's kind of what we do as librarians anyways. So you would hope it would carry over into a special situation like this, that, you know what, I don't know the answer to your reference question, but we can find out the correct one. So you would hope that staff would take their basic librarian training and just carry it over into an event like this. But I know when you do have, they are your front line to the people who like to come in and be loud with their complaints, and that can be a very nerve-wracking, stressful situation for those people that are right there on the front desk.
Well, and it can be easy as a sort of point person to get that tunnel vision. And it's like, I am so focused. I mean, you're fundraising, you're designing, you're making all these decisions, it can be easy to forget to communicate with your staff. Like, let's be honest. You're like, oh, I didn't tell you this. Oops, because you're just, again, that sort of overwhelm that comes along with this. So just remembering like, oh, I know it. I need to make sure everyone else knows it that needs to know it.
Yeah, I'm doing this every day and they're not. They don't realize that these things are happening. Yep, absolutely. So I just want to know, because you mentioned about finding movers, the known library mover companies. But what about an architect? How did you find what architect you were going to use?
So again, because it's a city-owned building, a lot of the process has to be done to bid, where everyone gets a chance. You can't just go out and pick one. So there was an RFP process. I will tell you, our architect pretty much exclusively builds libraries of different sizes and types, and then some civic building as well. So very, very specialized to library situations. In my first one, because it was a smaller city, they didn't have to put it out to bid. They just went with a local contractor, actually without consulting the library board, which was a whole funny thing. Worked out well. We got a beautiful library out of it, but I will say there are some really nice advantages to having an architect that specializes in libraries. But again, I've done what was essentially a contract build, where they sort of subcontracted with the architect, but the contractor was driving the process, and they had a great designer on staff, and we worked very closely. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. But some of that's going to depend on whether you have to put it out to bid or not.
Right. But putting out to bid, like you said, with the moving, even with the movers, might be a good idea anyways, just to see. There might be someone we just didn't know about, and until you put those out there, you don't know.
Yeah, and there were other things in the process where we didn't necessarily have to put it out to bid, but we had to get at least a couple proposals to show that like they weren't crazy. The movers were one of them, but I could not believe the price discrepancy. I could not believe that. So yes, very useful to know.
Let's see here. Let's see here. Also wants to know, what is the square footage of the buildings, the new one, and I suppose compared to the old one?
Can you hear me? Because you just went quiet and I cannot hear you.
Oh, sorry. And someone wants to know about the square footage of the building. I can still hear you, yes. Wait, no, we're okay.
Oh no.
I can hear you there. Okay. Hold on a sec here. Oh, we might have lost some audio with Cari.
I just changed mine. Can you?
I can still hear you. I can still
hear
you.
I can hear you now. I changed my speakers. It's not my best one, but I can hear you now.
That's okay. Not a problem. Oh, at least it wasn't until the very end here. Okay. Now someone wanted to know, what is the square footage of the new building? And maybe like compared to the old one, was there a big size difference there?
So our new one is 25,000 square feet. Our old one actually was not that much smaller. It was about 22,000 square feet. It was on 2 levels though. So we had 3 stairwells, an elevator, and 2 very large old boiler mechanical rooms that were a huge chunk of that square footage. So I haven't done the exact math, but the public square footage went up drastically, even though the overall did not increase that much. And we did go to all 1 level, which is a lot better. No elevator maintenance, accessibility, security,
yeah,
staffing.
yeah. Did the budget include the furniture, fixtures, and equipment and collections, or just construction costs?
So the 10 million was constructions and the furniture, fixtures, equipment. It did not include any new books for the collection. We did end up paying for that donor wall out of library funds instead. And it did not include outdoor signage, which in hindsight, I wish we would have included. So we actually have this spring coming a new big outdoor digital sign on the corner, because just I'm pointing and you have no idea what that means. But just because of where we are in our block, we've gotten feedback that people come and we kind of sit off the road, that they don't know for sure that they're at the library, because there's letters on one side. So anyway, we have added some of our additional outdoor signage.
I think that's something you mentioned earlier too, that you're going to forget things, and that's okay. It's like you said, I think you mentioned, it's not a building in stone forever. There's going to be things you'll, as you actually, you can imagine how you're going to use something and plan, oh, I need this, but in practice, is going to be, something's going to come up that's different, and you can always tweak that later. If you forgot the outlet in some particular location, you can always call an electrician to come in and put in a new, on the fly one outlet. It's not the end of the world if you didn't include it in the entire project. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another question here, which is, I'm not sure if we can answer this one because it's different from what you're doing, but someone says, we are renovating one of our branch libraries. Wow, that was built in 1830. Whoa. Okay, maybe a Carnegie library, I don't know. We have to respect the integrity of the building, but we have had many suggestions for upgrades. Do you have any suggestions for maintaining the historical factors as well as modernizing it? I know a lot of libraries do deal with, they have a Carnegie building that does either need renovating or they move to a totally new building, but yeah.
I'm going to say, fortunately, I've never dealt with this. I have colleagues who have been directors at Carnegie libraries, and it is a whole thing. Again, our libraries we were demolishing no one cared about them historically, in the sense, they were from the 70s and they were concrete caverns. So I haven't encountered any of that. So unfortunately, I can't think of anything helpful to say other than good luck.
This may be something like, if you do put out an RFP like you did for an architect or a consultant, put something in there that specifies we're looking for someone with this kind of experience and knowledge of not just library, but historical building renovations in general. You're going to need someone who does have that kind of expertise and previous experience with it, because you're going to get lots of ideas, yes, from people who think, as you mentioned, Cari, I know everything about historical buildings. I have a big opinion, and I'm going to tell you that I think you should not change that wall. And an architect or an engineer is going to come in and say, yeah, no, that wall needs to come down because it's completely unsafe. I'm sorry that your building is historical, but certain things need to be done on the expert side. Yeah.
And when visiting libraries, you're going to have to focus in on not only libraries that have your particular struggle, but you may have to go a little further to find ones that are closer to that situation that have successfully managed that, because that's a big ask.
And someone else does comment back to help out the previous librarian asking about that older building. That is exactly what we did. He knew about what we needed to do to put the new addition on, which we are now in the process of doing. Yeah, you need a historical building expert, not just a library expert. And maybe look into other Carnegie libraries that maybe have done, this person says ours was a 1910 Carnegie library. Yep. So maybe look and see if other Carnegie libraries have done this kind of thing, how they, did it. There's fire trucks going down by making loud sirens. So I was just muting myself. So it wasn't
Earlier we had trains, and I was like, oh, I hope nobody can hear the trains.
I'm not sure if it comes through or not, but yeah. All right, sounds good. The person says thank you. Yeah, all right. Anybody else have any other last minute desperate questions you want to ask of Cari before we wrap things up? I think I've grabbed all the ones I saw so far. Let me do a little. All right, I think we will. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much, Cari. This is great information. As I said, I know we have libraries here in Nebraska that are working on, we have new libraries being built, and some that are, they're in just the beginning thinking processes. So I think this would be very helpful for anybody who's doing that. And like you said, ideally you only do this once in your career. You did it twice.
And I hope I'm done.
I hope that's it. Yeah, you're done.
That's
but this is very awesome, great information. Thank you so much. All right, so I am going to pull presenter control back to my screen, here. I'm getting there. There it is. Okay. All right. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Cari, so much. This is amazing. We, as I said, the session is recorded. We're recording it right now. If you use whatever is your search engine of choice and type in NCompass Live, the name of our show, you will find our main page here, which is has our upcoming shows listed. But right underneath them is the link to our archives. And the most recent one will go at the top of the page here. As I said, there'll be a link to the recording on our Library Commission's YouTube channel and a link to Cari's slides that she's going to send to me. So you'll have access to both of those. I should have this up and ready for everyone by the end of the day tomorrow, as long as GoToWebinar and YouTube cooperate with me. Everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show will get an email from me letting you know when the recording is ready. We also push that out onto our mailing lists we have here in Nebraska and onto our social media. We do have a Facebook page for NCompass Live, which is linked from off of our website. So if you do like to use Facebook, give us a like over there. We post reminders, a reminder to log in today's show, information about our speakers, and then whenever recordings are available, we post here as well. So keep an eye on us there. We also use the hashtag NCompLive, a little abbreviation of our show name. We also, and anywhere else, the Library Commission has both a Facebook and Instagram page. So we sometimes will push things out there onto our Instagram. So that will be posted there. Our show archives, well, here I'll show you, you can do a search here if you want to see if we've done a show on any particular topic you're interested in. You can search for the full show archives or just the most recent 12 months if you just want something very current. That is because this is our full show archives. And if you can see here, there's a little scroll bar. And I'm not going to scroll all the way down because you can see this is a huge page. But this is our full show archives, going back to when NCompass Live first premiered, which was in January 2009. So 2026, which we just started up with, is the 18th year of NCompass Live. Oh my gosh, we're 18. We have all of our show recordings archives here, all of our shows we've ever done. So if you are watching something old, do pay attention to the original broadcast date. If you're watching something older, things may have changed drastically since we did that show. Links might be broken. Resources may have changed significantly or no longer exist anymore. People will work at different places than when they first presented for us 10, 15 years ago. So just pay attention to that date. But we'll always, this is something libraries do. We keep things for historical purposes sometimes. And as long as we have a place to keep all of our archives out there for everyone to watch, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we will always have them available for you. So just be aware when you're watching any of our older shows. Back to the top here again. All right. So that wraps up for today's show. We got some thank yous coming in as well, Cari, from people. Thank you, very helpful. Thank you, Kristen and Cari. You're welcome. So as I said, these are upcoming shows. Next week, we'll be talking about the One Book, One Nebraska selection for 2026, which is The Antidote by Karen Russell. We have a statewide One Book, One Nebraska program that is in, what are we at here? Our 22nd year, 22 years we've been doing this. So that will be our topic for next week. So if you want to hear about that and see what we're doing here in Nebraska or participate yourself as a Nebraska library, please do sign up for that show and any of our other upcoming shows we have coming in the next couple of months. And in addition, I will mention one other event that we do host here through the Library Commission, Big Talk from Small Libraries. This is an online one-day conference that we do associated with the Association for Rural and Small Libraries. ARSL is our co-sponsor for this. And this is a one-day free online conference where all of the presenters are from small and rural libraries. Our requirement being that their population served or full-time enrollment, if they're a university or college, is 10,000 or less. It is coming up on February 27th. It's always the last Friday in February. And just yesterday, I finally got the schedule finalized and up on the website. Now we are still waiting for some fuller information from some of the presenters. We're letting them tweak some of their session descriptions from when they put in their proposals. But I do have the schedule up and what sessions will be done at what time during the day. So if you want to take a look at what we will be coming up on that day, you can do so and see what is on the schedule. We've got a mixture of public and academic libraries this year. So some from universities, some colleges, and some public libraries and public library systems. So please do take a look at that and register. Registration is open. It's been open, so you can sign up and register for the day. The entire day is recorded, so if you cannot sit there for the entire day and watch everything, that's okay. The recordings will be available later. We do have them available for our previous conferences, events, and I break them up into individual sessions. So you do not have to watch one long 8-hour recording. You can just watch an hour or for our longer sessions or our 10-minute lightning round sessions. So please do register for that and join us on February 27th for Big Talk, or join us at any of our future NCompass live shows. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Cari. This was great information. I'm so happy we could have you on the show. And hopefully we'll see you all on a future episode of NCompass Live. Bye-bye.